On the 24th of June 2022, the VA judgment confirming that Depp had been defamed by Amber Heard by all three of her statements, and Amber Heard had been defamed by Depp through his lawyer for one of his statements, was rendered and the order was final. This means it was legally enforceable, and both parties could face further sanctions should they repeat these statements. It should have put to bed all doubts and things should have been final. However, this was not the case.
Oh shit.
And on the 21st of July 2022, Amber Heard had launched her appeal to have the verdict overturned, and this furthered the discourse. Various articles were already printed and published on the day of the verdict, articulating the fact that the verdict was dangerous, that it was very problematic for survivors who may wish to speak about their experience against an high-profile person. A year on from their appeal, which was settled, the order is still final. Many are still discussing this verdict and how dangerous it is. In this 3-part docuseries, we shall be reflecting on the post-trial discourse, the case itself, and the social ramifications of the discourse that's been had. A larger conversation was being had about the cultural implications of the case. Many were stoking the flames, saying that your abuser will use their money and power to retaliate, and the lawyers will pocket the winnings. It was said that there was a rise in defamation cases, that it was a step back for the Me-too movement. There was a growing fear that it could be sending back the cause of women who complain about abuse by the hands of powerful men. Scholastic and research articles were being penned during this period of discourse. Sarah J. Harsey, a graduate of UC Santa Cruz who majored in psychology, had teamed up with Jennifer Freud, a researcher that introduced the concepts of DARVO, betrayal trauma, and much more. They teamed up to write a peer-reviewed article that's called Defamation and DARVO, and this was in August 2022. He went on to highlight that the Depp v. Heard trial had ignited discourse around DV, victim credibility, defamation lawsuits, and DARVO in itself. It highlighted, like many others, that Depp was not named in the article, that defamation suits are used to threaten survivors so they do not speak about their abuse, and how DARVO is employed in this setting.
Some of those defamation lawsuits that this article is talking about, yeah, you need to ask the question, how many of these have gone through? How many of these have gotten... You also need to ask the question, how many of these are defamatory, because these people realize they now have another tool in their toolbox to manipulate.
Charlotte Pramman, an attorney practicing in England and Wales and a staunch feminist, followed the footsteps stamped firmly by Maura Donegan, who called the trial an orgy of misogyny.
The evidence has got absolutely nothing to do with this case. It says something more about the deeply entrenched misogyny in our society.
Pramman poetically penning an op-ed in the Washington Post, stating that the result is gutting for individuals who watch the trial.
And even though Johnny promised that I deserve this and promised he'd do this, I don't deserve this.
Me, as a noble victim of domestic violence.
I have never wanted to be seen as a victim.
Victim is a word you can use.
Nor have I ever called myself one.
Ms. Heard, you testified yesterday. This is also a photograph of you from the same night, correct?
That is correct.
Isn't that right?
It looks to me like the one on the left has the vanity light, the makeup lights, you know, the more yellow-hued ones that go around the mirror on, and then the one on the right looks like it doesn't have those.
They look exactly the same.
Anticipating a victory.
That's his power. That's why I wrote the op-ed.
That could empower them to speak.
I have a right as an American. I just want Johnny to leave me alone. I just want him to leave me alone.
In belief that the justice system would protect them.
See what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp.
Hey, that's what we're doing.
Holy shit.
And yes. I know it's a fair fight. It sees how many people believe or side with you.
No matter what happens, I did get here, and I did tell the truth.
People like the guy. I like him. If I were cross-examining him, I'd still like him.
Pramman informed many of the Washington Post readers that Depp was not named. She spoke of the UK judgment, reminding the readers it was just 2 years ago that the judge had handed down a judgment stating that Depp had abused his accuser 12 times out of 14 incidents. He boldly stated that the women who watch the trial will recognize the classic DARVO playbook, perfect victim. She goes on to add that the biggest losers here are the US justice system and the women that may have put faith in it. The system is rigged against women.
Do you see any larger message beyond the case you tried?
No, I mean, frankly, we don't. We're here to talk about the case that we tried.
I don't believe Johnny Depp won that case. I think Amber Heard lost it. And I think there's a distinction here. Yeah. Amber Heard lost that case for, I think, one particular reason. Because she wanted to make herself seem innocent while making him seem guilty.
This victory was not pleasing to the many that expected Depp to falter on his second try. They had put a lot of faith that Depp would not prevail in his crusade to clear his name, or from their perspective, to further continue his alleged smear campaign and post-separation abuse with the courts against his accuser. What was implicitly and explicitly communicated through the long arm of the media was that the verdict set a precedent for those who may consider speaking up about sexual violence perpetrated upon them, and those that decide it's not worth the scrutiny, re-traumatization, or sustained abuse. That the Depp v. Heard outcome shows that it is an effective tool to use the courts and also to tap into the misogyny that's already here, being subjected to a smear job, and how the entirety of the trial was amplified by social media.
This is a great question. Why the heck are Johnny Depp and Amber Heard litigating this case in Virginia? Well, the answer is because those are where the laws are most favorable to Johnny Depp. Since Amber Heard posted a op-ed on the line, it means that you have a lot more options for jurisdiction and for venue. And so what Johnny Depp's attorneys probably did is a thorough search of where the litigation would be most favorable to him, and they settled on Virginia. And Washington Post had process servers in Virginia, which give him the right to file a lawsuit there. So he sued her in Virginia. She requested that it be moved back to California or relocated, and the judge denied it and said, nope, jurisdiction's good here.
The term forum shopping has come up a hell of a lot during this case. So how much does that actually factor into your decision making, your strategy, if you were to represent a client who is suing for defamation? How much does that actually factor in? Like, do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. It's one of the first one or two questions. Someone comes to us with a potential defamation claim. We want to know what states can we file it in, and can we keep it in that state? And if there's an anti-SLAPP law there, that is a gigantic burden for us to overcome, to recommend going forward.
The court has to have authority over the defendant. You get that authority in a couple of different ways. Either the defendant lives there, so if the defendant lives at that place, then the court automatically has authority. You live here. But the other way is that if you commit your tort or your offense in the state. So for instance, let's say if I go to Maryland, if me and Boozy were in Maryland and he defamed me in Maryland, even though he lives in New York, I could still file my case against him in Maryland.
Actually, the service to run the website publication or etc. is
correct.
Actually in Virginia.
Correct.
The ECWAS is in Washington, which goes to what you were saying in regards to the injury being committed.
Yes.
It was technically in 3 different jurisdictions that
correct.
he could have picked from, and all of them was weak for anti-SLAPP. I mean, if anything, anyone can pick from this case, in my opinion, is if you're gonna write an article that might be defamatory, maybe look at where it's located.
Where it's going to be published at, right? Yeah, because then you can be good. Next thing you know, you're dragged into court.
Okay, so I'm outside of the courthouse still, and I found a supporter of Amber Heard. This is very fascinating because from what I've seen online, there's not many of them out there. What's your name?
My name is Dan, or you can call me Amber Stan 11. But I think calling me Dan is easier.
But what is your opinion? I'm curious.
See, this is the problem with this case. I think there's a lot of speculation going around, and it's being told as truth. And it's just a vicious PR campaign against Amber Heard. I think that Johnny Depp's lawyers, PR team, they're just pumping out all this content for pro Johnny Depp fans and anti Amber Heard fans as well.
These are freak shows, right? And I know that's a charged word, but that was the appeal. The reason we were all glued to it was so, this is real, this is life, this is happening. It felt important, but not in an earth-shattering way. Almost like watching Game of Thrones, only we could see all of it. There were no cuts, there were no edits.
Many coined this trial as a trial by TikTok.
Well, you can speak now to the Washington Post columnist Taylor Lawrence, who's been following the events of this trial very closely. Taylor, do you think there's a danger that the social media landscape might actually start impacting the outcome of trials?
I think undeniably, we don't know that it didn't impact this outcome, right? The jury was not sequestered. We don't know what they saw online. The internet really swayed public opinion on this. I mean, a lot of people started as pro Amber, but after being exposed to 24/7 content bashing her, again, often very misogynistically, they were pro Johnny. So I think, you know, we don't know how this is going to play out, but absolutely public opinion and public opinion as voiced through the internet can affect big trials.
Taylor Lawrence, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
That social media had affected the jury, including Amber Heard herself, who sat down with Savannah Guthrie.
I think a majority of this trial was played out outside of a courtroom, unfortunately. I think vast majority of this trial was played out on social media. And I think that this trial is an example of that gone haywire, gone amok.
We are now in a world where social media is used as a weapon.
I think even the most well-intentioned juror, it would have been impossible to avoid this.
In an article that is filled with a series of self-edits and corrections, renowned journalist who was dubbed as the Bob Woodward of the TikTok generation, subtitling the piece as influencers had discovered there is money. She went on to blame her editor for the error in the article and was essentially a victim in all of this. What was it like seeing that unveiled, which led to a mass deletion by someone I'm not gonna name, you know?
She who must not be named. So yeah, if you actually say her name, she will actually magically appear and then like cast a spell. People can get some of that kind of stuff, so it's not fully private. But the way in which it's weaponized to make it look like that is 100% what these people are doing it for is just for the clicks. They're modifying their take or their argument or the way that they see things just for the money is I think it's sad. It's sad because that is the particular way in which that person clearly views the world themselves and probably what they would do themselves to modify their argument for money.
If you want to go viral, you're going to want to talk about the events in favor of Johnny Depp.
Why didn't you jump in and invest in that cash cow?
I don't care if somebody makes money on that or not. Media is in the business to make money. So it's a little hypocritical of them to report on YouTube people as if the money part of it is somehow wrong.
I really think it has a lot to do with Johnny Depp wanting the cameras to be in the room in the first place. I think he was aware of the public's perception of him.
When you're representing your clients, can you, as a defamation lawyer, you know, it's all about, you know, reputation, everything. Can you motion to the judge and say, yeah, I want cameras in here to broadcast to everywhere. I want this to happen because, you know, my client deserves it no matter what. Get it up. Can you do that?
No, as a general rule, most states that I know of, but certainly the federal courts where I do most of my practice, do not permit cameras in the courts, and you can't get them.
Cameras in court has always been something that has been met with much division in the United States of America. In fact, in the UK, it's actually now starting to be introduced after like a 100-year ban. It was introduced around June after the verdict was handed down to be seen for sentencing procedures. Whether it will be used to broadcast live trials like it is in the US is yet to be seen.
Judge asked Karate on her own motion,
said that she would broadcast this case. You have to recall that when this case really got into full swing, at least in Virginia, COVID, we were in the middle of a pandemic. So it's not like they wanted people flocking from all over.
Okay, no.
We were on in practice, no cameras ever. And I think it's a good thing, by the way. I'm not a fan.
You're not a fan of cameras? Okay, no. This is the first. I'm gonna pause on my next question. Let me ask, why are you not a fan of cameras? The reason I'm asking is because a lot of the people that I've spoken to, that proponents of cameras in the courts for transparency, that's their reason. What's your reason?
Well, I think transparency is a very valuable goal. But ultimately, I think the transparency that has been achieved in courts, in places where there are cameras in court over the last several years, has accomplished nothing.
I always point to the Chauvin trial, with the George Floyd case in Minnesota. Horrible, horrible, horrible thing. Cities are burning across the country because of what happened to this man. Yeah. And they don't allow cameras in Minnesota, but in that case they did.
Well, when they asked me this question in relation to the Depp case, whether social media played a role and what I think the role it played in that case, I try to remind people that social media, right, was responding to evidence. It was responding to the evidence we were presenting in that trial. Yes, some of it was funny. Some of it was, crude. Some of it was, bathroom humor or inappropriate language.
But that's just not what you're going to get on social media, which time and time again rewards outrage and doesn't just reward people with views and followers and clout, but also rewards them with money.
Documentaries were made en masse echoing some of these talking points. This was to illustrate how many had watched and covered the trial, had engaged in misogyny, and how many had fallen for the smear campaign that was spearheaded, made possible through YouTubers to pull a wool over our eyes, and how what we have seen at the trial was not as it may have seemed. Many were dubbed and claimed to be driving propaganda and misinformation. I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, and I am having a very hard time understanding the very simple fact of what's with the hysteria. Is there truth to these claims? Why does the reporting of this trial continue to paint Depp as the abuser? It was as if I was thrown into a labyrinth for the past 6 to 8 months of my life while investigating this case. I am asking myself, what is at the center of all of this? 7 years ago, a singular event has kicked off this Game of Thrones. And in an attempt to find the answers, I am met with more questions. All of these articles, headlines, documentaries, research papers. What is the end goal? What message are they trying to communicate? Is there a message at all? So I decided to hit the streets and the deepest depths of the internet that is called Twitter to try and see what is going on and how the everyday folk are interpreting these messages.
Did you see any of the aftermath, for example, the open letter being signed for Amber, the unsealed documents being released? Did you see any of this?
I'm not gonna lie to you, no.
No, that's good. That's good. That means it was only for Twitter.
Yeah.
How do you think the media has handled this trial? Not social media, by the way, just the media as well.
I mean, I think they made the justice system a joke in general, all of them, because the way that they just had this trial and show, it's just made a joke of the justice system, because the whole point of a trial is to figure out the truth. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and I feel like with every little evidence that was shown in media in general, it was finger pointing.
Based on what you heard, you actually wanted him to win.
I think that if you cannot give me a specific answer, then you are putting somebody's life at stake. You're saying you could not definitively say, he punched me or he hit me. The force was so strong, I wasn't sure if it was a slap or a punch. That's something somebody can work with. But you just saying the man hit me, I don't know where he hit me. But when you are playing somebody's life like that, you should be able to give me a definitive answer.
Why would I spend time looking on social media about a case which is just
it just seemed like they were just trying to defame each other.
Defaming each other.
Yeah, they were trying to defame each other rather than actually trying to get the truth.
Do you think if you saw those documents and saw all of those things, it may have changed your mind in any way?
No, support Johnny Depp 100%. Even if he did some, it's fine. At the end of the day, he's OG. He's a great actor. No, unless he did something actually really bad, then yeah, I'm gonna say no.
I was about to ask, what do you think he did?
I don't condemn violence.
Back then, I think, no, I believe Johnny, but I think like at the end of the day, both of them were really toxic. I think both of them were in a toxic relationship.
That can't be denied. That's actually, it was so evident.
Just like the way that he used to behave when he was in court. He didn't, he portrayed himself as a victim. Whereas if you see Amber was portraying herself as someone that she just came to say I'm gonna deny everything without any backup evidence.
What do you actually think it is?
In every single relationship you get into, there's gonna be arguments, there's gonna be swearing, there's gonna be I'm gonna kill you, there's gonna be like that, but only because they're famous, everyone puts it into a big thing. I can say to her, I'm gonna kill you on text. But if I was famous, they would take me to court, but she'd know it's a joke.
Damn. That was amazing.
Because we're talking about a 6-week trial, millions of people who are siding with Depp, who've all got different sources. There are people who watched it with, for example, Legal Bites' commentary, or Emily D. Baker's commentary, or without any commentary, or people who only watched half the trial through summary clips or whatever. There's so many different sources. How on earth are you going to trick all those people while also tricking the jurors? It's just infeasible. It's a conspiracy theory of the level of faking the moon landing.
And it was her saying something and talking about sexual assault, and people were like, "Oh, if that was me, I'd be like, Johnny, that's wrong."
Thing she would convince me that I was wrong is if she brought medical people, doctor's report, anything, esthetician, anything that she fixed her nose close to the date she claimed he broke her nose several times.
Is there anything that would have changed your mind at all about him?
Violent evidence.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's really good. No open letter.
It's not even, I don't care about that kind of stuff.
Let's look at it in terms of activism for a second in regard to this specific case. Why are they trying so hard to rehabilitate Amber Heard?
Oh, I can tell you why they are doing it. And the reason all comes down to the Me Too movement, which is nothing but a political movement, okay? It is Amber Heard damaged that movement. She destroyed it, not just damaged it.
So why
that
not
was
just
it. The
kick her out of the
swan
movement
song. The swan. No, because that movement gave them power. It wasn't about protecting women. It's not. And Amber Heard, if you remember, tried to set herself up as a Me Too ad. But it says Amber Heard is receiving some serious kudos from her In the Fire director and co-stars. The 37-year-old actress made an appearance at the 69th Taormina Film Festival in Italy over the weekend, alongside the movie's director Connor Allen, where he told Deadline he's so happy that while Heard went through something so awful, the experience didn't change her as a person. So if we go over to Deadline, so Deadline was the first one to do this, and then people just picked it up and repeated it. And I think that People most likely was given that heads up by her PR. I mean, just and probably paid. They had to have paid them. I don't know why they would repeat this story. It's not interesting. There's nothing new here. It's just one of those things that somebody interviewing the director from Deadline, he said that thing, and then her PR company picked up on it and made sure it got spread everywhere possible.
With all this reporting around the trial and its circumstances, we ask ourselves, was this an abuser weaponizing defamation and orchestrating a smear campaign? Or is this just normal reporting of our culture at large, making valid criticisms? Let's dig a bit further.
Very few defamation cases change people's minds. People usually have their own assessment of the people involved, assuming they know anybody. Everybody who likes you wouldn't believe anything that was said about you anyway, and everybody who doesn't like you thinks that, already thinks you're the worst person in the world anyway, so it's pointless having a defamation trial.
Yeah. Well, good evening. Bad news, I'm afraid, to start. Amber Heard is still yapping. She's broken her silence, which didn't last very long.
Where Johnny promises total global humiliation for you. Do you feel like that came true?
I know he promised it. I testified to this.
And now infamous text that was sent from Depp to Christian Carino amidst the divorce proceedings in regards to Depp and his accuser. In August 16 of 2016, this was when Depp had promised to deliver global humiliation to his accuser. And he has speculated that he'd done this in the UK trial and even now with a global scale at the US trial. Many have also speculated that bringing forth the details of the grumpy in the bed had further headed into this global humiliation for various reasons. That he only said this and only created this rumor in order to further enact on his goal of delivering this global humiliation. Many have also speculated that he also delivered this global humiliation through the use of bots in order to enact and coordinate this worldwide smear campaign on the internet, specifically Twitter. You're busy with your own defamation case coming up.
Yes, there's a pending motion by Christopher Boozy.
Yeah.
Who is a serial fraudster.
Looking into Bot Sentinel, how reliable is that software?
It's garbage. Twitter disclaimed, and we're talking pre-Elon Musk Twitter, wrote a piece about it saying that it didn't really consider it to be particularly reliable. And this is from Yoel Roth, if I recall, who was
I remember that, yeah.
Censor-in-Chief. There's an expert for every opinion out there.
Defamation isn't only for these particular cases. Defamation is for anything, right? Like even with my lawsuit with Christopher Boozy, my defamation has nothing to do with any of the stuff like that.
Are you Christopher Boozy's victim?
And most people are not wealthy movie stars. Yeah. And if somebody was making 100, 250,000, making a respectable living and then was unable to work because of defamation, and you can identify a sufficiently deep pocket, and I have a client who is suing the Daily Beast, which absolutely ruined her career utterly without justification in order to satisfy a political agenda at that magazine.
Yeah.
She cannot work as a journalist anymore. She simply cannot. No one will touch her. She's radioactive. So that's a reason to sue.
Not only was going for the lawsuit with the Sun and also with the accuser herself, the GQ interview was also seen as an example of this smear campaign that has been enacted by Depp towards his accuser. For some, following the events of a very public messy breakup of 2016, it was further exacerbated in 2020. There was a petition that was created in 2020 that gained a lot of traction during the Virginia trial. Depp's accuser had actually cited this petition as one of the many examples of the smear campaign that has been deployed by Depp. It was said that bots were being used to amplify this petition and it was in no way authentic. Depp's accuser further claimed that there was an active smear campaign afoot. In fact, she went on to say that the tapes that was even released to the public was edited. We went through that. Nonetheless, there were claims by mainstream outlets that Depp had foreign shopped so that he can find a favorable venue where cameras were permissible, so that he can use this as a much needed powerful vehicle to enact his smear campaign and his global humiliation onto his accuser. Discourse of bots took center stage.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, how social media seems to have influenced mainstream newspapers and media outlets. And I do wonder how many of these accounts, and I'm talking about thousands of accounts, are actually genuine, real people, or whether they are bots. because
Why
when
do
I
you
go
say
and
that?
because I look at some of the accounts and they have his name as a handle, they have his photograph, and the entirety of their comments, their likes, etc., it's just on Johnny Depp, and they're clearly just targeting anyone that mentions Depp, Johnny, Heard, Amber in different ways.
A lot of these cries were made while endless threads were gaining traction and going viral. In fact, it was actually so great and really well known that one user that went by the name of Camilla was picked up by Jezebel. All of this was done to show the world that Depp's accuser was not an abuser, but a victim. That the world fell for a well-orchestrated smear campaign to denigrate his accuser and to further show that he is engaging in post-separation abuse by the courts, by the media, and the vilification of his accuser is prime example to show how this was done. One documentary on the trial went to show that the story of which Depp's accuser was pooping on the bed was also part of this smear campaign, and it was of course a lie.
It was shared on the record that Depp sent this text. Again, public record.
Of course, this was done to show that the creators that was trying to amplify Amber Heard were being vilified and they were being suppressed, and this was one fine example of the message that they were trying to get out. The young fair woman on YouTube who was covering the UK case, coverage showed that Depp actually knew that Boo actually had bowel troubles. A lot of Twitter accounts that were masquerading online trying to fight the misinformation that was being, allegedly sent out by a lot of pro-Depp's accounts were highlighted in this documentary to show that, hey, Amber Heard was not lying about her charity donations. In fact, she had actually donated some money and just couldn't follow through with the donations because of the legal fees that she had to pay. There were threads on this, and the thread was actually picked up in the documentary and placed in the documentary. Not just that, the media were incessant in publishing articles, multiple articles, in and around the unsealing of the document that was made available by Andrea Burkhardt, and had procured these documents as a result of a crowdfunding project to actually get these documents and made them available online for free. They were alleging that, hey, Depp had blocked 4 experts from testifying. Also, that Depp was actually trying to introduce nudes that his accuser had actually walked away from millions and millions of dollars. Yeah, the community property, like, what's her entitlements there?
Entitlements there, when you own a piece of property, you have an interest in it, all right? It's like having shares in a company. If you own your computer, you bought it at the store, you own all 100 shares in that computer.
Okay.
Community property is making the assumption that everything that is part of the marital estate, each party has 50 of the 100 shares in that piece of property.
Gotcha.
Right? That doesn't mean you get half of the stuff in the estate, and it doesn't mean that you get half the value.
Does that include debts?
Yes.
So if she had a lot of debts, right? Would that be shared between both of them?
Yes.
So here's the question. If he had a lot of debts, would that be shared between both of them?
Yes.
So if his debts outweigh her, could she have gotten anything from this?
She theoretically, it could be as simple as, I agree not to give you part of this debt in exchange for you getting nothing. To answer your question, yeah.
It was also said that Depp had admitted in the docs that, hey, he was not alleging harm with Amber Heard. It's an admission of liability that you did not suffer any injuries because you did not.
No. No. It's at best an admission that you are not claiming injuries for a diagnosable medical or mental health condition. Clearly, the jury found, $10 million worth of injuries that he suffered. So, he definitely suffered injuries. And people, I think, too, were under the impression that, he said he had emotional distress. You know, it caused him anxiety and stuff to be accused of these things. Well, duh. But that's not enough to get you over that hurdle. Having anxiety is not in and of itself like a pathology. You know, everybody has anxiety. That's normal, and that is recoverable in a civil case. If it doesn't rise to the level of, you know, being a diagnosable medical condition that you are relying on to try to justify your damage claim, then there is no basis for that IME. The thing that I found that was fascinating from the unsealed documents that I don't think I've seen anybody comment on it. Certainly Amber's team hasn't. There's some very interesting information from Dr. Curry describing the stonewalling that she got from Dr. Hughes. Another thing that we learned was that Dr. Curry was not allowed to do the same types of what Dr. Hughes had referred to as collateral interviews, talking to the previous therapists, friends, associates, acquaintances, things like that, to get information about the relationship and the abuse claims. Dr. Curry was specifically not allowed to do that based on an argument from Ben Rottenborn that basically was just nothing more than saying it's inappropriate for her to be able to do that. Judge Azkarati said okay and signed off and agreed. So Dr. Curry wasn't allowed to do this, not only the same type of evaluation that Dr. Hughes was, but as Dr. Hughes testified to, what is a very normal and expected and routine thing to do for that type of an evaluation.
The allegations that he had herpes and erectile dysfunction was also rife during this period. And many that were engaging in this discourse were arguing that, hey, because he was having these issues, this was the main catalyst for the abuse, and he is an abuser.
The notes also state that Johnny would have trouble getting erect if he had been drinking, which would cause him to get angrier and then prompt him to blame Amber for his incompetence. Does it maybe make more sense now why Johnny would rape Amber with a bottle in Australia?
All of this demonstrated the extent of the smear campaign that was set in motion with that text to Christian Carino. It was all unsealed and delivered right before our eyes. Everything that you said in terms of who she picked to go for, it is absolutely strange that it's not ABC. It's not, but it's Entertainment Tonight, People, Rolling Stone,
LA Week,
yeah,
Us Insider,
yeah.
All of these, it's all these are all PR. They're just PR landing spots.
Okay,
really.
So can you go into a bit more detail in regards to the PR? What you mean by PR landing spots?
Okay, I'll read you the message that I got from one of these people.
Okay.
She was trying to sell me a spot in LA Weekly and LA Wire and Us Insider. Hello, Megan. I hope this message finds you well. As a PR professional, I am always on the lookout for innovative leaders who are making a difference in their respective fields. Your work as an award-winning journalist and author caught my attention, and I believe you would be a great fit for our upcoming feature in LA Weekly, Top 10 Visionaries to Look Out For in 2023. We are looking for individuals who are pushing boundaries and making waves in their industries. Your experience and expertise would be a valuable addition to our list. LA Weekly has a wide readership, and this feature would give you exposure to a broader audience. If you are interested in being featured in our publication, please let me know. We can discuss the details further. So I wrote back. I knew exactly what this was. I wrote back. I said, yeah, I'm interested to know how it works. You're a PR firm, so you place articles in magazines for people and they pay you to do it for good press or whatever, right? What do people pay for these placements? She goes, yes, that's correct. Prices vary depending on the publication. Here are some examples of the recent press campaigns I've hosted so you can get an idea of what this feature is going to look like. She sends me 3 articles, one in LA Weekly, one in LA Wire, Top 10 entrepreneurs to look out for in 2023, and one in Us Insider. Placements for LA Weekly are $500, and we have 3 spots left. So I click on these articles, and they're all it's so terrible. It's all a bunch of douchebags, you know, like just just awful. These people are paying $500 to get their name in some publication. This is not how journalism works.
Was it PR by Johnny Depp's accuser to say that she was abused through the courts and that the verdict was incorrect and she has been wronged by the system? Or is there more that meets the eye? The smear campaign started in 2016 on the 27th of May 2016. It began with the announcement to the world when Depp's accuser sought a DVRO.
From some other source other than TMZ, which was alerted.
What does it take for TMZ to obtain a copyright over something received directly from a source?
Something in the realm of 15 minutes just to do what I described before, which is putting bumpers and a bug on something and write the article and post it. It's pretty fast.
How much time had passed from the time you received the kitchen cabinet video to the time it was posted on TMZ?
About 15 minutes.
Depp's accuser ended up receiving a TRO for our troubles, a restraining order against Depp. Very quickly, by showing the letter that was sent to them by Depp's accuser's legal team that was requesting for spousal support, amongst other things. I remember us in the previous interview saying that you have represented high-profile clients, right?
Yeah, I'd say regionally high-profile clients.
Regionally high-profile, more than $1 million that they make.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In that sense, yeah.
More than $1 million, more than 10 million, etc. So, the other, the spouse that they are out earning, how much does it come through their mind that they may be called a gold digger, etc. If they were to get X amount, or if they were to, go through the whole process and get some money out of it or something like that.
It is something that does come up. It doesn't really affect the proceedings. But again, if you're talking about somebody who's been with them for 15 years or 20 years, you're going to have to be, I'd say, a particularly petty person to look at that individual and say, oh, they're a gold digger. They raised his kids. Like, they didn't just marry him and leave him in a year and a half. There's not some ridiculous 40-year age difference where they were waiting on him to croak and he got an artificial heart and it's been going on for longer than they thought. Like, nah, they're getting $20 million because they raised his kids and they don't have any marketable skills.
Other friends of Depp came to his public support, notably Doug Stanhope. The comedian went on to say that, hey, Depp's accuser is actually not being forthcoming, that she's actually the abusive one, etc. And from here, many outlets were calling her a gold digger and were printing and misinterpreting words of Doug Stanhope to be saying that she is a gold digger because, as he said, was blackmailing Depp. As a result of this, Depp's accuser actually ended up suing Doug Stanhope, saying that all of this was a hoax and she was blackmailing Depp. In regards to the suing, she made it known to the press that, hey, should she win, she'll be donating the the proceeds, the compensation to battered women in Arizona.
That also, they warn you, somebody who worked in the media in a sexualized job, they warn you the minute you start suing, you have to be prepared to never work again, because people don't like to work with people who sue, especially women. You are warned off doing that. And that's not to say if people feel like they have been defamed, they should defend their rights.
While all of this debacle was going on, Depp was actually in New York preparing for a show. And for full disclosure, promotions for the movies that he was actually doing during his time was also in full swing. The media attention was intense in the midst of all of this. Depp's accuser had sat for a deposition on the 12th of August 2016. This was the same day, in fact, that the TMZ cabinet video was actually released and unearthed of Depp knocking over some cabinets. More and more details were actually being released to the press. In fact, this one was actually very damning because it showed the damage to the Australian property. One must also note, these pictures, with everything that I've shown you on here, I've done a thorough search. These pictures were never seen by the public, and these pictures were released on the 16th of August 2016 at 9 a.m. Pacific time. They were showing the damages that was done to the Australian property during the Australian incident. This was the first time we were introduced to the incident without much details to actually follow. And on top of this, the outlet that actually released this exclusive, they were actually directly naming the source as Amber Heard's legal team. A few hours later, not even a few hours later, I believe approximately 2 p.m., Depp has sent a message to Christian Carino saying that she is begging for a global humiliation. Anything that's taken in isolation without the context, everybody is guilty.
In California, domestic violence affects spousal support. So the day that she showed up with bruises was actually the day of their spousal support meeting, and Johnny Depp
Domestic violence affects, but wait, what do you mean by that? Like, let's actually hit that point, because I didn't actually know.
California has preemptive laws on division of property based on findings of domestic violence, and it's interesting because if you were found guilty of domestic violence, you're not allowed to get spousal support or anything from your spouse. If you are the abuser, you don't benefit from the marriage.
Adam Wellman had met Johnny Depp in order to work with his case with TMG. While all this was going on, Depp's accuser had approached Dan Wootton in order to write an article against J.K. Rowling, questioning her decision to cast Depp as one of the characters to play in Fantastic Beasts. And after this article was published, full disclosure, although it was revised, he had sued the Sun based on this wife beater claim. After this, she alleged a bot campaign, a smear attack against her because of this petition, and that bots were behind it, though it was created by a real human who is now deceased. Rest in peace, Jeannie Lawson. They also said at the same time that it would impact those that want to report to the police and all those things. And that's where I'm like, okay, let's ask a lawyer. Let's see what legal implications can come from this defamation case that would slip over to criminal law.
Yeah. So I there are multiple ways of kind of looking at it in terms of like the law. Like how does this case impact case law? Well, it is in the trial court. So when you talk about precedent, the trial court level doesn't have any precedential value on future cases in terms of like whether or not this means that future cases would be adjudicated in a certain way. Not really.
Down, but it really bugs me when you get commentators sort of in the media saying, "Oh, this jury got it wrong." It's like, well, you weren't there. You did not like hours on this. The one thing that made me think this jury really paid attention was, at the time the judge was giving her jury directions, she made a mistake, which I actually tweeted and said, oh, she's slipped up there. I wonder if this will be relevant later. She gave the wrong direction on filling the form out. And when they came back and they hadn't filled out page 3, I said, I told you that would happen.
Oh my gosh, so that's why people were blaming them for that. It wasn't even their fault. What do you think about the impacts of cameras in court?
I was in that courtroom. I can tell you the cameras were very unobtrusive. People argue about it, and here in Canada we don't film our court cases, but I actually think that this is a really good example of why we should. A lot of people right now hold the court system in skepticism, and I think part of that is just that they don't see what actually happens. And that's in part because the media was doing a very poor job of reporting what was actually happening in the courtroom. When you watch this witness, do you believe them? As a member of the public who's trying to watch this, trying to know about this trial, what's a better impression of credibility? Hearing some reporter saying, Amber testified to this and I believed her, or actually watching her testify and being able to make your own call on that? I think we actually saw this huge gap between people and ultimately the people who watched the whole trial were the better informed people.
So let's go back to 2016 and examine all of these findings in context. Now, there's a lot more to meet the eye than why she, than just this is a simple settlement and she walked out from millions as it was being reported by the media. In the documentary, I've seen this. Doesn't really change anything because this was also available in trial. Terence Doherty actually testified to this.
What we did receive was the $500,000 Vanguard charitable contribution, and then the next year the $350,000 contribution. If you were asking specifically about the one that we received the $500,000 contribution from, we believe that is a donor advised fund that was set up by Elon Musk.
Oh.
Who is Elon Musk?
He's a tech entrepreneur.
The initial payment of $350,000 was made directly to the ACLU from Depp's accuser.
When did the first donation, the $350,000 from Ms. Heard, actually arrive at the ACLU?
It was very soon after the communication between Elon Musk and Anthony, and I believe that it was that communication was in August of 2016, and it was shortly thereafter.
So the 350 come from Elon also?
Saying that it was actually Elon Musk that was of Vanguard that was actually making these donations, that he was making them on behalf of Depp's accuser. In fact, Depp's accuser said so herself, that he was making these donations on behalf of her. In fact, she went on to say, and I'm not even butchering this, she went on to say that these donations did not count towards her pledge.
Well, at least $500,000 that was donated to the ACLU in your name wasn't paid by you, right?
I believe Elon made a donation in my honor on one of the years.
Yeah, and it didn't come out of your $7 million divorce settlement, right?
No, nor did it count towards my pledge.
And at least $500,000 that was donated to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles in your name wasn't paid by you either.
Right, those were made at the same time.
And it didn't come out of your $7 million divorce settlement.
Nor did it count to my 3.5 obligation.
So realistically, the amount that she has actually paid out of her own pocket was $375K, added by $275K, as I've shown you. Well, failed to show you because, hey, let's go back a bit. In 2018, around this time that she had received the money, it was actually shown that in January that she had actually paid the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles $275K. She had made this payment of $275K, which would make it $375K. So it's actually, I don't know, you do the maths. I'm not really good with mental maths, but that said, all of that said, have been receiving installments in full. You've made the payments before the final installment was actually being given to you. There was actually a press about it showing that, hey, you have donated the money.
$7 million in total was donated. I wanted nothing.
First payment is scheduled for August 31st, 2016, and that's $200,000, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Quote, I've remained financially independent from him the whole time we were together, and the entire amount of my divorce settlement was donated to charity. End quote.
That is correct.
Is that correctly?
Yes, you did.
The him you were referring to is Mr. Depp.
That is correct.
The president of Development Systems International, Stefania Stark, actually spoke out on this on Inside Charity. Stefania Stark, all she does is raise millions and millions of dollars for charities. Even if you want to argue the semantics around pledge and donate, charities need to have this distinction. When a literal charity fundraiser, the president of it is coming out to refute, why not amplify this? Because isn't misinformation supposed to be something that they are against? You know, with the amount of pledges that they get yearly, right? If they don't follow through with those pledges, I would assume every charity will be up in arms.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then there's only so much that they can also bank on in their financial planning, because a pledge isn't a donation. They can't factor that into their budgeting for the year because there's still no guarantee they're going to get it. Amber!
That when Depp's accuser actually went to that Dutch TV show, she had the full mens rea, the full mind that she had made donations, that she had donated all of this, because it is reasonable to infer that if you're going to keep making 275k of payments, maybe not even 275k, if you've made this one payment and if you've paid the ACLU before, you have followed through with all of your payments, because all these things are not done through the press. Nonetheless, those are just the facts of the case. But we know that she's only made one payment to each of these organizations, just one payment. Now let's dig a bit further into this payments claim. Like I've said earlier, there were threads that were being made showing that she couldn't actually make the payments that she had promised to make. Why? Because she had legal fees of up to £6 million, showed a few documents and say, yeah, these are the facts. This is from one of the threads that was amplified by a couple of journalists. Now let's unpack that. Forget the 6 million for a bit. Let's put that to one side and just ask ourselves this very simple question. If she has made the payments of 6 million, why does she have insurance? The insurance company policy in those records, in those documents, shows that she actually took out this policy on September 2019. The VA case was launched in 2019 in March. He sued the son in June 2018. Now the son is a completely different entity from Amber Heard with their own deep pockets. This has nothing to do with her, because end of the day the case did not proceed until 2020. So again, what legal fees did she have to pay? If you further inspect the documents, she did actually have legal fees to pay. That's actually a truth. In the documents here, it showed that yeah, these were the legal fees. It was in its 100,000, possibly 50 to 100k. If I'm being generous, maybe 300k at max, but not millions, as 6 million as she was purporting to have paid, because the insurance took over and covered all of our costs from September 2019. The facts remain that if she did pay fees, it was minimal at best because the case was not underway. All of these details were revealed in the unsealed docs, and as we have shown you, the media had access to these unsealed docs. They have come across this information that I'm reading to you because it is there. That's where I got this information. It was in one of our motion in limines, the same motion in limines that they conveniently picked out that Depp's team was going to introduce nudes. Why are they reporting on this but not on this? Do they have a moral compass
No. Media with a moral compass. That's funny.
As I started researching the case, I saw some of the reporting, and there were sometimes I would watch coverage of it in the morning as I was getting ready to go to the courthouse, and I would sometimes think, wow, that's not the way I would have framed that. That's not how I saw it in court.
Okay, but what about the poop situation, the dog situation? It was really important that I actually get to the bottom of this part of the smear, because it is just grotesque if this was actually turned out to be a lie. So to get to the bottom of this alleged smear campaign, we have to once again go back to 2016 and kind of investigate from there. In 2016, the question was being asked to Depp's accuser in her full deposition in regards to this. The full deposition is actually available on Incredibly Average's channel, and it is available to watch in full, but I'm going to play an excerpt from that video to show you what she was saying at the time when it was more contemporaneous, because allegedly this poop incident happened in April, sometime in April, when it was during her birthday, and this deposition is in August.
The one before that question is, can you describe for us with your hands how big your dog is, Boo?
Boo is, she's a square.
Okay.
She's about this big.
Okay.
She's like a brick. She's a brick.
Let the record reflect. Can you describe approximately how many inches you are saying Boo is in length?
How big is?
What kind of dog is she?
She is a Yorkie.
A Yorkie.
Okay, that's a
Can you describe how long she is?
She's okay. So she's probably this long.
Okay. Do you have an approximation? I only want you to tell what you believe the truth. Do you know how much she weighs?
She weighs.
Don't guess.
I don't know how much she weighs.
Okay.
But she's almost as wide as she is long. She's a brick. She's a cube.
A cube or a brick. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the story of the poop in the bed actually hit the press not during the UK trial or the VA trial. It was actually public knowledge in 2018, before any of these trials actually gone on. The only thing that makes me assured and a bit more confused is how both sources actually spoke to this magazine. It wasn't just Depp's side who was saying he has proof of this. You also have the ex-wife rebutting all of this, all from anonymous sources. I'm only saying ex-wife and Depp himself because we now know in hindsight that it was both of them, and there's no other people that were privy to this knowledge that would have gone to the press without their knowledge. Come on, let's be real. A year later, as the VA case was launched, there was a full deposition that was being made by Josh on the 19th of November 2019. This deposition was being used in the UK case as part of as his witness statement. In fact, the judge actually found Drew to be a very credible witness and relied heavily on his testimony in regards to the relationship. Now, that's not the most important part. The most important part is when you go into Justice Drew's very public witness statement. In that witness statement contains all of the details in regards to what he was testifying to in that deposition. There is the unfiltered transcript on page 56, line 5 and 19. It was alleged by Josh Drew that there was a massive argument between the group, that JD had blamed his accuser of domestic violence for the poop incident. He claimed that Ayo had specifically gone into the toilet to remove one of his own turds and placed it in the bed as a practical joke. He added that at a certain point down the line that Depp was claiming that Kevin Murphy, the house manager, has taken samples of the poop and sent it off to a DNA lab to be tested, and it came back as positive that it was human DNA. He claimed that Raquel Pennington, Amber, and Ayo himself had actually told him about all of this. It is very important to know at this point that none of this was public knowledge. None. at least not very known. I must lay out for full disclosure that Johnny Depp did not actually lay out documentation for the results of this human DNA test that he done in regards to the poop. Neither as his accuser actually laid out the documentation of the dogs needing the help or the vet, for these issues. No documentation was provided as basis for their claim. At this moment of the deposition, as said to himself that he is no longer friends with her, and also Johnny Depp, he has no allegiance to Johnny Depp to actually make this up himself. So, and the judge also relied on his testimony. Whether the judge has seen this transcript or not remains to be seen. But everything I just said is neither here or there. This is public information. I found this in just one click. Wouldn't Channel 4 do their due diligence on this YouTuber who was claiming all this? The mainstream media has been saying that this case is a cesspool for misinformation and anyone can speak as if they have authority on the case. We have a YouTuber here speaking as if she has authority on the case. Wouldn't Channel 4, a national broadcasting television network, don't know what they are to be honest, wouldn't they want to verify this information to see if it's actually true before putting up this opposing view? Because let's say it's actually true and what they were implying was that he made this up so that he can make his accuser pay for coming forward with this knowledge and it was enacted with malice. Wouldn't it make sense for them to do their due diligence and just see if there was any basis to what this YouTuber was claiming?
Again, public record.
For something that is easily searchable. All I did was search poop in every single witness statement until I reached Judge Drew. Very simple. You do not need a qualification for this. Poop was literally just there. That's all I searched. The documentary went out of the way in the same episode to create more falsehoods. So why would they say that they have taken it down? What was the actual purpose behind that quite easily provable lie? Because I'll be completely honest with you, the way that it was framed made it seem like it was something Milani regretted doing. Funny enough, all through this period from June 1st on to present day, many Amber Heard supporters with their accounts on Twitter has been harassing everything Milani has done. Here are all the screenshots of what I could find. Every time that Milani posts, it has been met with harassment after harassment just for this one simple video. So for one people out there that they are taking the video down when they haven't, it's kind of suggesting, hey, all those harassment, all those posts that you've done, it has worked. They're now taking it down, which they haven't. And I congratulate Milani for standing their ground, because you should not be bullied into submission to do something that you do not want to do. I think the Daily Beast was the worst one, where they edited this, but I can't believe they actually alleged that Dr. Hughes, Spiegel, the IT guy that I can't remember the name of, Julian Archer, that's it. They said they didn't testify that Depp literally stopped them from doing it. I was like,
yeah, that was just that was such a cherry on top of the sundae that has been the media coverage of Depp versus Heard. I mean, that really summarizes it. Or when the person made the comment about Jason Momoa, testifying at the trial because somebody had made a joke, a TikTok joke. And somebody saw that and actually thought that was real. The media has just lost so much of its credibility when it comes to this type of coverage, and it's been a problem for a long time. It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of sticking around with commentary and YouTube and stuff like that, because the state of legal journalism has been trash. absolute gutter trash for decades, frankly. And so there is a real need for honest, informed, educated commentary to be able to interpret the stuff that is happening in a way that is fair and not just a way that is there to distort it to promote a narrative.
The social media stuff on this has been wild.
Wait. Before we actually get into that, what is online social engineering?
Social engineering is unlike like you go in and hack code. You hack people. So, you know, some of the stuff that in the Depp Heard trial is they claim that it was inauthentic online activity.
Okay.
And most people have a really pedestrian view of what that means. The Depp Heard kerfuffle is perfect for certain foreign state actors to undermine the West in terms of a free press and democracy is not the best way to go. Look at how awful everything is. And most likely what we see, because I know that was a thing where it was, oh, they were pro-Depp, oh, they were pro-Heard. In my experience, they tend to go at both sides because what they want is the conflict. They don't care who wins, right? It's like Godzilla versus Mothra in a big kaiju fight. You don't care who wins as long as a bunch of stuff gets wrecked. The idea is to undermine the idea of jury trials of people's peers in this case. And let's face it, they did that really, really well.
Now, if we could sidebar for a second and go back to 2016 once again, in that 10-day break where the Honorable Judge Akurate had to go to a judicial conference and give a speech, before that break, there was a photo that was supposed to come in as evidence, but was blocked due to late discovery rule. So because this was blocked and they didn't adhere to the procedures, a few days later, during this break, TMZ had hold of this same exact discovery. They had done a story on it. And who handed them this photo? Now, when court resumed, this was actually a point of contention. You see that sidebar. You can see in the transcripts of this sidebar and what was going on. They were talking about this leak. Elaine alleges that this was Adam Gorman. I get his history, but come on. The guy has been kicked off the case. This is frankly stupid because I wouldn't even bother looking into this if it wasn't for this very comment. To be quite honest, no one has actually said who leaked what. The only person that said it is Elaine Brederhoff, and I'm wondering, why would you do that? Why would you say it and ascribe it to a man that is not even on the case? What interest is there for this guy that's been kicked off the case to suddenly now obtain a picture out of nowhere that was submitted by Depp's accuser herself and was rejected? It makes no sense whatsoever that it would be him to do it, risk his license, risk further sanctions on Depp's team. It's just not clicking to me. But because of that, I'm looking at this and I'm drawing inferences that I probably shouldn't have, but I can't ignore it because it again is so stupid. Why she would allege it's Adam Gorman that modified it and leaked it to TMZ. These documents actually show that, hey, it was Court TV. Now, I do not know why the judge actually named Court TV here and say that picture that was Court TV. Nonetheless, the only correspondent of Court TV that was actually in court was Chanley Painter. Sitting next to her is David Shane, the head of Amber's PR of Sane Communications. Oh wow, I literally thought this was it and this was all that was given out.
Oh no.
Oh
no, you must not assume good faith on the part of these crisis PR actors.
Wait, so that's even worse to even learn now. So even with their own documents that they procured and put out selectively, it
Yes.
still looked so bad for Amber
Yes.
Heard.
That
So
was the
bad.
best they could get, and it was still awful.
Oh my god, I cannot believe.
And so
what
now
is-
you know why the misinformation has been so necessary, has been such a key part of the strategy, because the truth does not favor Amber
At
Heard,
all.
and
At
everybody knows it.
And I remember when you were in a Legal by Charity stream, and you shared you shared a story in regards to one of the supporters. Could you, if you don't mind, could you please share that again? Could you share that again?
Well,
yeah.
There was a woman who was at the, and I was being very careful to make sure she never ended up on video, but she was there, and she was sort of being quiet, but she noted that she was there to support Amber, and I didn't want to sort of call attention to her, because it's everybody's there for their own reasons, and you're not trying to but I knew that there were some people who might not be happy with that. I mean, there's a variety of people in that crowd, right? So I sort of was like, okay, cool, hey, welcome. And later I saw her, and she was quite upset, and I actually went to go talk to her because I was kind of concerned. I was worried that basically one of the that she'd gotten sort of a hard time from somebody in the gallery. And so I went up and basically was like, hey, is everything wrong or everything right? And she was saying, well, she was really upset because she said basically that she'd come there to support Amber, and after watching Amber's testimony, she was like, she's just lying up there.
Men who are wrongly accused and can prove that they are wrongly accused, like that Johnny Depp he proved that he was wrongly accused. Even with that proof, you should not be able to recover, because some other woman may not want to tell her story because of fear of this happening to her. And I think that's just nonsense. I think, unfortunately, if this has happened to you, you tell your truth, and if you can't prove it or he can't prove it, I don't think you're going to have a problem. But if you go and lie, like sometimes, like a lot of times situations happen. I've been involved in many cases where women have straight up lied about the assault, and at one point, you don't know who's telling the truth. But there's been times where there was a camera there. The thing is, this woman had now written a false police report. She had now written a false police report, right? And now it's like, we could charge you with this because obviously what you're saying isn't true, right? But now, if you charge that woman, then the thought process is, well, somebody who it did happen to may be afraid to come forward. But now what about me? The power of just the allegations. She thought she could just make the allegation but it didn't happen. So what I mean to say by this is that I think the way the system is now keeps everyone honest. Because if you're going to say this stuff happened, and if I can prove it didn't, then you are in trouble. But if you can prove it did, then I am in trouble. So that's the way the system works.
What are the common mannerisms or behaviors that you see that is from your experience as trying DV cases? What have you noticed? And I want you to not include Amber Heard and Johnny Depp in this. Just your experience. Like, what have you noticed that stood out for an abuser or someone that was adjudged to be an abuser? For someone that was deemed to be a victim.
Yeah, and I think that I'm not a doctor or mental health professional or anything like that, so coming from the legal side, usually there's either some kind of documentation that somebody would bring to us, whether it's injuries, medical records, went to an urgent care or a hospital or ER, apology, emails and texts from their significant other, trying to leave, trying to do certain things and not being able to for one reason or another, being kind of swept back into it or pulled back into it multiple times is not unusual. But usually there is some kind of documented evidence to prove, especially if there's long-lasting significant domestic violence, to prove that injuries did occur and the abuse was long-standing from friends and family members and medical professionals, even if it's just a primary care physician where, they notice a bruise here, a bruise there. that corresponds with some of the stories that they tell of what they've been through. So that's just from a legal side, some kind of documentation that helps us prove things, and not just I said he did this, he said I did this, neither of us have any documentation. That's not to say that the abuse did not happen there, but it's very difficult to prove legally speaking.
Let's say that you have a client that claims they were abused, but they don't have anything. How would you defend that client?
So again, I would talk to them and obviously offer them any help that I can. I'd want to connect them with counseling and mental health professionals if they're going through traumatic events like that. If they wanted to file a civil lawsuit, right, in America also and in Florida, private practitioners can't file criminal charges. So if there was a situation where they wanted to sue them for money, I would have to look at it and be honest with them and tell them whether or not I felt like we had enough to prove this case by a preponderance of the evidence. And if we didn't, even if I did believe them, sometimes there's nothing I can do. If they want to file for a restraining order, again, I would go through and see if we had enough. And sometimes that's an even lower bar where your client can come testify. And if the judge believes them, they can grant that temporary restraining order. And then you might be able to get a permanent one depending on the he said, she said. But there's not a lot of risk in that money and time wise as there would be in a civil case, or even trying to get the state attorney's office on board to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. You're usually going to need more than just somebody's statement, even if you believe them. It's not to say that we don't believe them, but we would need more than just a statement to take a case like that.
The idea that people are less likely to come forward, that is always a possibility, but that really depends on the perception for each individual. And I think that for those people, it really doesn't do any good for people to come out with the articles that they did saying this makes it harder for these people, because they are sending that message to the people that are not so initiated with what happened in this case, with what happened, you know, how the facts came out with this trial, that they may just hear that message and say, oh, that's what that means, I'm not going to come forward, I'm afraid. But the ones who did pay attention and did watch, I had people come, write me messages talking about how they had a court hearing or a court case coming up where they had to be a witness in their own case. And they were emboldened by watching how things played out for Johnny Depp, and also understanding the process by watching a panel of lawyers describe what was happening, so that they could be less intimidated to go into that process and actually live through that experience.
I'm gonna drop a really spicy take.
Okay, go on. I love spicy takes. I love paprika.
I'm putting on my feminist hat. This is hot, spicy, like Hungarian paprika right here. Character assassinating Camille Vasquez, Dr. Curry, and a whole bunch of other women who, the woman who interviewed Amber Heard for 2020, it is this going after like a half dozen women to defend one. How is this believing women? Why is one woman believed and not all these other women? Why is Camille Vasquez evil and protecting an abuser as opposed to a really good lawyer doing her job? Why is Steph Curry, is that her name? No, that's a basketball player. Sorry. What was her name? Dr. Curry.
Shannon Curry, Dr. Shannon Curry.
It was an S. Come on, it's Raptor. I live in Raptors.
This is going to get clipped, folks.
Dr. Curry, she did her job. Camille Vasquez did her job. The interviewer in 2020 did her job. All these other women down the line, the women on the jury, even the Amber Heard's lawyer, that poor woman.
Elaine.
The savagery. That is so damaging to any woman trying to do something significant in the public eye. They did so much damage with the even if she lied narrative. Because what's that feeding into, right? And I really like Michelle Goldberg. I really like some of the people who did the even if she lied thing. But I'm like, I gotta stop you. Because what's that saying? We know women lie. It's okay. Poor wee lambs. No. I don't want to live in that world.
In my honest opinion, in collating all of this, there was nothing that could prepare me for actually articulating all of this Rihanna was once a survivor of domestic violence in the hands of Chris Brown, but she has been met with so much vitriol and smeared because she decided to collaborate. The discourse all through this trial has been primarily focused on how survivors would be impacted by that verdict. Yet, the same people that were making those sentiments were also lambasting Rihanna for her decision to work with Depp. Leading the charge with this was Charlotte Pratman. In fact, the person that said the perfect victim actually is often written by men, was the one to criticize the decision. I cannot begin to tell you how this is really ironic, to be honest. Michelle Landis Darbo, a staunch supporter of Depp's accuser, has led the charge to the open letter to end harassment of survivors that choose to speak out, in which many activists and individuals who are reputable somehow in their field were penning and signing the open letter, with reputable people joining in signing as well. And it was exactly 100 people that signed it. She has made a slew of tweets in regards to Depp and other people, especially Rihanna, that has caused other users to collate and create threads of her behavior online. Then Michelle Darbo made this tweet. It really gained traction to a point that she had to delete the tweet, and she was really called out by a lot of people.
Of all the women who suck up to male power, women lawyers are the absolute worst of the bunch. First of all, you are a woman lawyer. Second of all, you work at a law school.
What she didn't mention, which I think is quite weird, is the woman that represented Weinstein, who also represented the Depp's accuser, Roberta Kaplan. He did not mention that, but she had choice words for Camille Vasquez. Then Michelle Darbo made this tweet. Now we have to reflect and sit back and ask ourselves, if a smear campaign was afoot, it definitely has been signed, sealed, and delivered.
After seeing the way the media spun and continues to spin a year later the Depp v. Heard case and the verdict and the jurors, I want cameras in every courtroom everywhere. Let people see for themselves. Because otherwise I don't know what you get. And we would still be fed that Depp somehow beguiled a jury and that verdict is unfair. That's what we would still be getting fed. And we watched it ourselves and went, just roll it.
Of both cases, whether one case is being superseded by a recent victory or whether in both countries our legalities are different, so we have to, it does not really matter too much, because, and the real losers here are unfortunately the survivors, who are being told that there is nowhere to go as long as this verdict stands. They have no hope of being believed and their story invalidated. On episode 2 of the Depp v. Heard Labyrinth, where I am going to be taking a much deeper dive into the background of both Amber Heard and Johnny Depp to explore all 14 incidents of abuses and bring together a cohesive timeline and paint a picture of what could have possibly happened.